So, for the last 5 years, I have been working as a literacy coach at one of our local high schools. And while occasionally I do get the pleasure of working with students like the one that you saw earlier, most of my time is spent remediating students that have gotten to high school and still have difficulties with reading and writing. Now, what that means is that in order to earn the pleasure of my company as a student, you need to have failed one, possibly more, of your mandated state assessments, sometimes more than once. And it's under these circumstances that I met a young man who, for the sake of our conversation this afternoon, we're going to call Andre. Now, Andre is a senior, and he had failed to pass his state-mandated writing test. So, on a cool fall afternoon, I plucked Andre and several students like him from their regularly scheduled social time, otherwise known as lunch, and pulled them to my classroom to go through some writing remediation. And as you can imagine, they were thrilled. Students love giving up their social time to be with me, and why not? Because I can take literally just about anyone, and in 2 days, a mere 3 hours of time, transform you into someone capable of passing a state assessment. Now, the only way you get better at writing is by writing, no secrets there. And so, after taking care of some initial business, Andre and his colleagues started on their first prompt. When they finish, my routine is that I go and I give each one of them individual feedback. Well, guess who finished first? And not just first, in record time, in less than 15 minutes. Andre. So incredulous, I walk over to Andre, and against my better teacher training, had fairly low expectations of what I was going to find on this piece of paper. At first glance, I can tell you that it was short. I mean, after all, it had taken 15 minutes, right? However, it was on topic. It had complete sentences, free of fragments or fused ideas. It had interesting, specific vocabulary. I was ecstatic. This is not the type of writing that I was accustomed to seeing in remediation. I beamed at Andre. I went through all of the things that he had done correct, and I was prepared to impart on him my nugget of magic wisdom that would propel him to passing the state test. When he cut me off, he said, "I don't do this type of writing." Well, I was caught off guard. And I asked the only logical question that I could think of, and I said, "Well, then what type of writing do you do?" Well, he rattled off a list of a variety of genres, poetry, raps, song lyrics, but restated adamantly that he did not do writing for school. And that afternoon, Andre made me think. There seems to be a paradox in education, that educators and other stakeholders really believe that we have a writing crisis on our hands, while simultaneously, our students are doing more writing now than ever before. They just don't do this type of writing. So I started to wonder what would happen if we could leverage the type of writing that they do in a way that it would impact and facilitate and further their education. But first I had to think about why they write for themselves. Well, for better or worse, from tweets and statuses and pictures, our students write to share their thinking, right? And instantly, without worry about revision or editing, they can press the send button, and that thought in that moment is captured for all of posterity in cyberspace. However, I can't get them to show me what they're thinking in my classroom. I sit and I look at students' papers and I wonder, how did I get this? This most commonly happens when I'm working with students on math. And my students sit there and their default mode is to punch buttons on the calculator and worry about the thought process later. I had a particularly sadistic calculus teacher in high school who we referred to as Yoda for a variety of reasons. Short, big ears. And he insisted that we learn to calculate derivations longhand before he showed us a maddeningly simple shortcut. If you know calculus, you know what I mean. I now understand that he wanted to see our process. He wanted to see our thinking. However, while that thinking is important and leveraging our students' thinking and getting them to share their thinking in class like they do on Yik Yak would be fantastic, I also suspect that this is not the type of writing to which Andre was so opposed. From poetry to rhythm to percussion to rhyme, at the core of why Andre wrote for himself was it was how he could express himself. And he simply didn't see that happening in the writing I was asking him to do. See, teenagers, and lots of our students, are rapidly outgrowing this container of conformity that we expect them to fit into for their first 18 years of life. They yearn for independence, but they have little real control. And so they change their hair, or their dress, or their diet, and sometimes they'll write. And whether it's kept private or whether it is shared, for some students, writing truly is the pinnacle of self-expression. However, I will wager that that type of selfish, secret, escapist writing never ends up as a 5-paragraph essay. The 5-paragraph essay exists in classrooms across the country, usually depicted as a hamburger with the buns representing the introduction and conclusion. Yes. And while some diet enthusiasts may say that carbs are bad for your waistline, I will argue that the 5-paragraph essay is bad for writing. Now, I recognize we teach all students, and that students come to us with different levels of ability, certainly as it pertains to writing. And I recognize that students need a model. Leonard Pitts Jr., the exceptional opinion columnist, is a model for writing. Dave Barry, the humorist, is a model for writing. Malcolm Gladwell, the best-selling author, writer for The New Yorker, and I think he's done a TED Talk, is a model for writing. A hamburger is not a model for writing. A hamburger is lunch. But it is easy, and it is accessible, and finding good models of writing can be difficult. And if I'm honest, the real problem isn't that the hamburger is used as a model for writing. The real issue becomes when the hamburger is the only model used for writing. When the writing that we do in school becomes synonymous with formulaic, robotic, assembly line writing, then writing loses its power to capture an individual's true voice. And for students like Andre, rather than lose their voice, they simply opt out and decide, I don't do this type of writing. But even if teachers suddenly started using authentic mentor texts, and even if we encouraged all sorts of creativity, it still wouldn't address the fundamental problem that we have as educators. Ultimately, writing is a transaction between the author and the audience. And that is why social media is so addictive, right? You have this feedback frenzy. You post something, a comment or a picture, and you see in real time what people say. And then if you have something to add to the conversation, You can, and you perpetuate that cycle. But this isn't the way that it works in education. Writing in education is more like waiting for your luggage at baggage claim in an airport. You go and drop off your bags or your paper. Now, occasionally you'll get some initial feedback. It might be that your bag is too heavy, you need to repack. It might be that you forgot to put your name on the paper. But those quick fixes are made, and off the paper goes down the conveyor belt, through the curtain, onto a mysterious journey, hopefully to be reunited with its appropriate owner at the end of the trip. The duration of the flight depends on several things: the number of students in the class, how long the assignment is, whatever's going on in the school calendar. At the end of the trip, usually the baggage is worse for wear. And your brand new luggage has scuffs and old gum on it. Your student's paper may have more red ink than original text. Unfortunately, all this feedback in an instant gratification society is no longer perceived as being relevant, so it gets tossed aside. My friends that teach English classes have between 93 and 142 students in their classes. Now, I don't care how short the assignment is or what kind of technology you use. Providing meaningful feedback on 142 of anything is not instant. So, in order to address this and make writing transactional, we may have to rethink who our audience is. Does the person providing feedback always have to be the classroom teacher? Does the audience always have to be the classroom teacher? I wonder how our students would respond to authentic purposes for writing. My husband and I are considering building a new house, and it is in this context that I've seen one of the best examples of persuasive writing that I've come across in quite some time. We were looking at building, like in a new community, dirt, bulldozers new. But after a lot of discussion, we decided that this just wasn't right for us. We had a very tenacious salesperson, and you know that I have a background in sales, so I appreciate that. And she sent the most amazing follow-up email. It would have blown away the state writing test. It had appeals to logic, appeals to emotion, a call to action in the conclusion. It had counterclaims. It was not 5 paragraphs. It was so good, I made my husband reconsider the house. The thing is that we may not have students that all go on to be journalists or novelists or teachers of writing, but we need to ensure that they enter our society capable of leveraging the written word to better themselves and the communities in which we live. There's too much at stake. Recently, the Association for American Colleges and Universities released a study that 93% of employers surveyed said that a candidate's ability to communicate clearly was more important in the hiring process than their major. There's too much at stake for our students to decide that they don't do this type of writing. So what about Andre? If this was a blockbuster, feel-good movie, I tell you that 2 days with me took care of everything. He passed that test, graduated with flying colors, and went on to help other youth like himself. But it's not a movie. And 2 days with me could not undo the decade of what Andre had learned and believed about himself and his capacity for writing. And the good news is that Andre is real, and graduation is in June, so it's not too late for him. But the even better news is that we can change how we think about and how we engage students in writing, but it cannot and it should not happen within our school walls. We've had so many great presentations already, and I have to wonder, as a teacher, as a parent, as an artist, as an entrepreneur, What can we do to engage students for authentic purposes for writing and give them authentic audiences? And what can we do to engage our students, like Andre, to show them that this is not only a type of writing that they can do, but it's a type of writing that they should do, because there is tremendous value in what they think. Thank you.